What was that? The Weasley's wildfire.
King's Cross! We're here!
I mean, the first time we did it, it was, we changed the theme park industry. We did things that had never been done before. First of all, I'd worked in film and television for 20 years before this, and the film industry in Florida kind of died off, so I transitioned over to theme parks, and I got a call from Universal to build a model for them. And I went in, and the first day I had to sign my life away on non-disclosures and everything, and then they said, well, we're going to have you build a castle, but they didn't tell me it was Hogwarts. They said, we're going to have you build a castle, and then of course when I saw it, I knew it was Hogwarts because there were only a couple of the Potter films out at that time. Because it took us about 4 years from the time I started until they opened the gates. The very first week I was there, I reached out to Paul Dario, who was the producer on the project, the creative producer, and I said, Paul, when you guys get ready to hire a decorator, I would really like to be the decorator. And I didn't think anything else about it. And then 2 years later, when they got ready to hire a decorator, Paul came back to me and said, do you still want to do it? And I was like, absolutely. We started out sending a lot of stuff out to vendors to be built. And then ultimately, we ended up bringing all of it in-house and hiring a bunch of our own local in-house artists, or a group of local artists, a lot of whom had worked in the film industry with me. We brought this little band together that really finished and polished all of the props and set dressing for the first Hogsmeade. And like I said, it changed the whole landscape of the theme park industry and what people think of as being an immersive environment. In Hogsmeade alone, there's over 35,000 pieces of props and set dressing, which is insane. And then in Diagon, there's over 106,000, which, I know one of the largest theme parks in the world, I won't call out by name, but they've only got 75,000 props in the entire park. And so I was pretty proud that we had 106,000 in Diagon, because that's a lot of stuff. And I think that the richness of the Potter world is really what makes it beautiful. I mean, it's just layers and layers upon stuff that really tell a story. You go to Honeyduke's and you can tell about the shopkeeper at Honeyduke's, and same with Ollivander's. I mean, each one of those little shops has its own story, and we tried to tell, further that story with the props. And as much as possible, we took directly from the film. Stephanie McMillan had done such a beautiful job decorating the films. I didn't want to. I couldn't do better than her. She's an multiple Academy Award-winning decorator, So, and I was very fortunate and very blessed that she took me in and really taught me how to do Potter. I was on set for the last 3 films, for Half-Blood Prince and the 2 Deathly Hallow films, and Stephanie really taught me the ropes and how to do Potter. And I'm just so fortunate that this, amazing British lady took this redneck kid from North Georgia and said, okay, I can teach him how to do this. And she did. She could have very easily said, no, I don't want to have this guy work on it. But she really took me in and taught me how to make this rich world like she had done on film. When we did Hogsmeade, they were still filming the films. And so Warner Brothers didn't want to give up a lot for us to put in the parks. So there's very little stuff in Hogsmeade. There is, as you're going into the Gryffindor Common Room, there's a cabinet outside of the Gryffindor Common Room, and I think in there, I know there's, an original Quaffle Ball maybe, and there is a what we call the Green Tree toy, which the kids bought when they went to Hogsmeade for the first time in the films, and you saw them they were sitting on the table in the Great Hall when they got back from Hogsmeade, and so it's like this little green tree man, and there's one of those from the film that's in that cabinet. In Diagon, if you go into Borgin and Burke's, a lot of the stuff that you see up above in there, because that place is completely filled, a lot of that stuff came from the film. Laurie Ruffett, who was my right-hand person, the other half of my brain. She and I went to England for a month and went through 200 40-foot containers of props and set dressing that were used in the films. And from that 200 containers, we narrowed it down to, I believe, 4 containers of stuff that we brought back, 4 40-foot containers. And the majority of it is just filler stuff. But there are things like there's a big bay window that looks out over Nocturne Alley out of Borgin and Burke's, and there's a big glass cabinet in that window, and that's the one from the film. Rumors that Borgin and Burke's is haunted. I don't know if it's true or not, but well, there is a doll in there that one of my shoppers was out. He called and he said, "Hey, I found this doll, but the shopkeeper says it's cursed. Should I buy it?" And I was like, "Of course you should buy it." So it's in Borgin and Burke, so it may have really been cursed. I don't know. It's a scary place. One of the cool things in Nocturne Alley that I like is the little tattoo shop. It's right outside of Borgin and Burke's here, and that was one of the things. Actually, all that stuff is from the film. I didn't mention that. They built the tattoo shop. I think it was for Half-Blood Prince, and then you never saw it on camera. So Warner Brothers gave us all the set dressing, and we recreated it in our Nocturne Alley. So that was the first time that you really saw it, even though it was built for the film originally and then just never seen. Almost all the props except for the tattoo chair and the tattooing machine that we made, everything else is pretty much from the films or from the film set in there. We also had some original Quidditch pads that I believe are in the Quidditch store there. And then in the Weasley Brothers store, there's quite a bit of original stuff. And in Ollivander's, there's some wine boxes. We get a few wine boxes from the film. I mean, there's, I think, 50,000 wine boxes in Ollivander's at Diagon, but there's a few of them that are real screen used. A lot of the luggage in the train station also came from the film, or from the films. That phone booth, they didn't use it in the film, but they molded it for the phone booth that lowered down into the Ministry of Magic, because those British phone booths weigh like 2,500 pounds. They're extremely heavy. So the film company made a lightweight plastic version of it that they used in the film, but we took the real version that they had molded and brought it back. So that's actually the real phone booth that they made the one for the film off of. A couple of my favorite things, and it's very sentimental. In the castle, Stephanie, who I mentioned earlier, passed away while we were doing Diagon Alley. Sorry. So her portrait's hanging in the castle. And that's pretty special. That's one of my favorite things. It's really special because she meant so much to the wizarding world. I mean, I think the coolest, it would be a tie between Borgin and Burke's and the Weasley Brothers store, because I was there for the filming of the Weasley Brothers store, and so we went to extreme efforts to exactly reproduce it as much as possible to what we saw in the film. And once again, that was one of Stephanie's favorite sets that they did, and so it meant a lot to me to get it exactly right. She found the exact manufacturers who made all the packaging for the Weasley store, and so we tried to go back to all the original people and make everything as authentic as possible. I would love to do the Burrows and build the whole Weasley house, even have the wedding set up out back. I would love to do that whole thing. I think that would be so much fun, just to be able to go through their house. And I would love to finish out the interior of Hagrid's hut and be able to go inside of Hagrid's hut. There was a museum exhibit when we were building the original Hogsmeade. There was a touring exhibit, and you could go inside Hagrid's hut, and they had the big chair, and you could sit in it and everything. That was so cool. I'd love to be able to do something like that. The biggest thing that bothers me about Hollywood is it's not completely immersive because you can see the rest of the park around you. And that's one thing that I loved about Orlando is when you're in the Wizarding World, you are there and you don't see the rest of the park. Hollywood, there's a whole separate row of facades that Orlando doesn't have that are down, I think it's down behind Ollivanders, I believe. But there's several stores there, like Brews and Stews, that Orlando doesn't have. So yeah, so we got to do, so that was fun because we got to do something new. And each one of them has a little bit different thing. But I mean, for the most part, we tried to stay basically with the same design because everyone loves the original so much. Even with it being so tight and packed in, it just adds to the feel of it, though. Of a busy hustle bustle, little town, and the smallness of the stores is very much like a lot of the places in England, very quaint little shops, and so I think even with the huge crowds there packed in, it still makes it. I think that adds to the charm of it. The size of everything being so small. I mean, of course, the first one will always be my favorite. So I mean, whenever I take people there, I take them. I do it as Harry did. I start out in London, we go to Diagon, we get on the train, we go to Hogsmeade. I have to do it the way it happened in the stories. After we finished Diagon Alley, we were working on, we were in the middle of Hollywood, and I got a call from Disney, and they said, we're looking for somebody that can do what you can do. And I said, okay, do what I can do on Star Wars? And they said, we'll call you back. And they just hung up. And I was like, okay, well. And then literally 6 months later, I get a call back, and they picked up right where we left off and said, yes, it's Star Wars. And I said, okay, well, if that's it, I can do what I can do if it's Star Wars. Star Wars was my Harry Potter. That was the love of my life when I was growing up. As far as a fiction that I was a fan of, or a film that I was a fan of. And that was one of the things when I first started going to Potter conventions. This, like I said, I got into this world after the second film had come out and the second book, I guess, and seeing how the fans have grown from being little kids carrying their mom's dust broom around to now they're adults, and they've got the money to build these decked out Quidditch outfits and have these really high-end brooms, and it's really cool to see that and to see how that fan base has grown over the years. A story about the first time we let people in that I really love, and I get chills every time I tell it. So the first time that they let people into Hogwarts, I went and stood in a corner of the portrait hall and just watched people go through. And there were two girls, probably in their teens, that had on their full Potter robes, sweaters. They each had their wand in their hand, and they walked into the portrait hall. And they dropped to their knees and they wept. And I was like, wow, we did it. It's like they really love it. This is amazing. None of us knew if people were going to like it or not. We didn't know. Until we let people in, there was this great apprehension that, gosh, what have we done? And are they going to like it? And to see when I saw those two girls come in and they literally dropped to their knees and cried, it blew me away, Well, like I said, a lot of our heart is in all those places. There's not a lot of jobs where you get paid to make people happy, and that's what we do.